Hello and welcome back to the Wholehearted Living podcast. I'm Deb Thorpe and I'm so glad you're here. This is episode 8 of series 2 and today we're diving into something that can be a challenging practice for the people pleasers, caregivers and anyone who's ever felt guilty for saying no. Aligned boundaries. Protecting your energy without guilt. Now, if you've listened to last week's episode on self-compassion, you learned about meeting yourself with kindness. And boundaries are compassion in action. Because here's the truth. You cannot show up fully for what matters if you're constantly depleting yourself for what doesn't. Boundaries aren't walls. They're not about shutting people out or being selfish. They're about clarity. Clarity about what's okay and what's not. Clarity about what you have capacity for and what you don't. Clarity about what honours your wholeness and what depletes it. And yet for so many of us, setting boundaries feels impossible. We say yes when we mean no. We tolerate behaviour that hurts us. We overextend ourselves to avoid disappointing others. We give and give and give until there's nothing left. And then we wonder why we're exhausted, resentful and disconnected from ourselves. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential. So today we're going to explore what boundaries actually are and what they're not, why saying no without guilt is an act of self-respect, the cost of weak boundaries and the gift of strong ones, how to set boundaries that actually stick, and what to do when people push back, because they will. This is stage 4 of the WholeHearted Technique and it builds directly on everything we've covered so far. Radical honesty, understanding your patterns and self-compassion. Because you cannot set aligned boundaries if you're not honest about what you need. And if you don't understand why you've struggled with boundaries before, and if you can't meet yourself with compassion when it feels hard. So take a breath, ground yourself, and let's begin. So let's start with the basics. What is a boundary? A boundary is simply a limit. It's a line that says, this is okay, this is not okay. It's clarity about what you will and won't tolerate, what you have capacity for and what you don't, what honours your values and what violates them, what supports your wholeness and what depletes it. That's it. That's a boundary. But here's where it gets complicated. Because most of us have been taught that boundaries are selfish, mean, rigid, a sign that we don't care about others, something that will make people reject us, and so we don't set them, or we set them weakly, or we set them and then immediately apologise for them. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not walls, they're bridges. Walls keep everyone out. They say, I don't trust anyone, I'm shutting down, no one gets close. Boundaries, on the other hand, create safety. They say, this is how you can be close to me. This is how we can have a healthy relationship. This is what I need to show up fully. Boundaries don't push people away. They create the conditions for real connection. So let me give you an example. A wall says, I'm never talking to you again, I'm done. A boundary says, I can't have this conversation when you're yelling at me. I need you to speak to me respectfully, or I'll need to step away until we can both be calm. Do you see the difference? The wall shuts down connection entirely. The boundary creates conditions for healthy connection. A wall says, I don't need anyone, I'll do everything myself. A boundary says, I need support and I'm going to ask for it, but I'm also going to be clear about what kind of support I need. A wall says, I'm fine, everything's fine, while you're secretly drowning inside. A boundary says, I'm not okay right now and I need some space to take care of myself. Boundaries are honest, they're clear, they're kind to you and to others. Because when you have clear boundaries, people know where they stand with you. They know what's okay and what's not. They don't have to guess. They don't have to walk on eggshells. Boundaries create safety for everyone. So if boundaries are so important, why do so many of us struggle with them? Here's what I've learned after 20 years of working with people. You struggle with boundaries because you learned that your needs didn't matter. Maybe you grew up in a family where your needs were dismissed or minimized. Love was conditional on you being easy or good. You were punished for saying no. You had to take care of others' emotions. Your boundaries were violated and no one protected you. And so you learned, if I have needs, I'm a burden. If I say no, I'll be rejected. If I set boundaries, I'll be alone. That's not the truth, but it became your truth. And now, as an adult, you carry that wiring. You say yes when you mean no. You tolerate what you shouldn't. You prioritize everyone else's needs over your own. Not because you're weak, not because you don't know better, but because somewhere deep inside you still believe that your needs don't matter as much as everyone else's. And that belief, that's what we're here to change. Let's talk about what happens when you don't have boundaries, or when you have weak boundaries that you don't enforce. Because there's a cost, a real tangible cost. 1, resentment. This is the big one. When you say yes but mean no, when you give more than you have, when you tolerate behaviour that hurts you, resentment builds. You start to resent the people you're giving to. You start to resent yourself for not speaking up. You start to feel bitter, angry, and trapped. And here's the thing. Resentment is a sign of a boundary violation. If you're feeling resentful, it's because you've crossed your own boundary. You've said yes when you should have said no. You've tolerated what you shouldn't have. Resentment is your body's way of saying, this isn't okay. You need to protect yourself. 2, exhaustion and burnout. When you don't have boundaries, you give and give and give until there's nothing left. You're constantly overextending, you're constantly depleting yourself, you're running on empty, and eventually you'll crash, burnout, breakdown. Your body forces you to stop because you wouldn't choose to stop on your own. Boundaries are not optional, they're how you sustain yourself. 3, loss of self. When you don't have boundaries, you'll lose yourself. You become so focused on what everyone else needs, what everyone else wants, and what everyone else expects, that you forget who you are. You forget what you want, what you need, what matters to you. You become a reflection of everyone else's desires, and the real you, the true you, gets buried. Boundaries are how you stay connected to yourself. 4, unhealthy relationships. Here's a hard truth. Weak boundaries attract people who will take advantage of them. Not always intentionally. Sometimes people just take what you offer. And if you keep offering more than you have, they'll keep taking. But weak boundaries also repel healthy people, because healthy people want to be in relationships where both people have needs, both people have limits, both people show up honestly. Strong boundaries create conditions for healthy relationships. 5, teaching others how to treat you. Here's something I say to my clients all the time. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully, you're teaching people that's acceptable. If you tolerate being taken for granted, you're teaching people that your time and energy don't matter. If you tolerate being the one who always gives while others take, you're teaching people that's the dynamic you're willing to accept. Your boundaries, or lack of them, are instructions for how people can treat you. And if you don't like how people are treating you, look at your boundaries. So now let's talk about what happens when you do have strong aligned boundaries. Because boundaries aren't just about what you're saying no to. They're about what you're saying yes to. 1, energy and capacity. When you have boundaries, you have energy. You're not constantly depleting yourself. You're not overextending. You're not giving from an empty cup. You have capacity for your work, for your relationships, for your creativity, for your joy. Boundaries protect your energy so you can show up fully for what matters. 2, clarity and peace. When you have boundaries, you have clarity. You know what's okay and what's not. You know what you're available for and what you're not. You don't have to agonize over every decision, and that clarity creates peace. You're not constantly second guessing yourself. You're not constantly feeling guilty. You're not constantly wondering if you should have said yes. Boundaries create inner peace. 3, authentic relationships. When you have boundaries, your relationships become more authentic because you're showing up honestly. You're not pretending to be okay when you're not. You're not saying yes when you mean no. You're not performing or people pleasing. You're just real. And the people who can handle that, those are your people. The people who can't, they were never meant to be in your inner circle anyway. Boundaries help you to find your people. 4, self-respect. When you have boundaries, you respect yourself. You're saying my needs matter, my time matters, my energy matters, I matter. And that self-respect, it changes everything. Because when you respect yourself, you stop tolerating what you shouldn't. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. 5, wholeness. And ultimately, when you have boundaries, you stay connected to your wholeness. You're not fragmenting yourself to fit into everyone else's expectations. You're not giving pieces of yourself away until there's nothing left. You're whole, you're intact, you're here. Boundaries protect your wholeness. Here's what most people don't tell you about boundaries. Not all boundaries are created equal. You can set a boundary from fear, from protection, from trying to control outcomes, from building walls to keep yourself safe, or you can set a boundary from alignment, from deep knowing, from honouring your true self, from the future vision of who you're becoming. And the difference, it changes everything. When you set boundaries from fear, they feel rigid, they feel defensive, like you're bracing against the world. They come from a place of, I have to protect myself, or I need to control this situation before it controls me. These boundaries might keep people out, but they also keep you small. They're built from your survival patterns, not from your wholeness. But when you set boundaries from alignment, they feel different in your body. They're not walls, they're thresholds. They're not about keeping the world out. They're about honouring what's true for you and inviting in what matches that truth. Aligned boundaries come from the future vision of who you're becoming. They come from the vision of you who is already whole, already worthy, already enough. The you who knows what you desire and deserve to have. Here's what I want you to understand. The future version of you, the one that is living in alignment, in wholeness, in joy, that version of you already has these boundaries in place. She doesn't overextend herself to prove her worth. She doesn't say yes when her body is screaming no. She doesn't dim her light to make others comfortable. She doesn't abandon herself to keep the peace. Not because she's selfish or cold, but because she knows. She knows her worth isn't up for negotiation. She knows her energy is sacred. She knows that saying no to what's aligned creates space for what is. When you set aligned boundaries, you're not creating something new, you're remembering. You're stepping into the truth of who you already are beneath the survival patterns. So, how do you know if a boundary is aligned? Ask yourself, is this boundary coming from fear or from love? Fear-based might say, I have to protect myself from being hurt again. Aligned might say, I honour myself enough to only engage in relationships that feel safe and nourishing. Is this boundary keeping me small or helping me expand? For example, fear might say, I can't let anyone see this part of me. The aligned might say, I choose to share my full self with people who can hold it with care. Does this boundary feel like a wall or a threshold? Fear would say, rigid, defensive, you can't come in. Aligned would be clear, grounded, this is what I'm available for. Is this boundary honouring my survival self or my true self? The fear-based is all about protecting old wounds, preventing imagined disasters. Your aligned self is about honouring your values, your vision, your wholeness. So when it comes to setting boundaries from your future self, here's a practice I use with my clients. Close your eyes and connect with the future version of you, the one who is already living in alignment, already embodying wholeness, already choosing herself without apology. Now ask, what boundaries do you have in place that I don't yet? Listen, feel into the response, notice what comes up. Maybe that version of you doesn't check work emails after 6. Maybe they don't explain or justify their no's. Maybe they ask for what they want without apologising. Maybe they walk away from conversations that drain them. Maybe they celebrate themselves without waiting for permission. These aren't aspirational boundaries, they're already true for the version of you that exists beyond the survival patterns. Your work isn't to become that version, your work is to remember that that's already you. And then start setting boundaries from that place, from alignment, from the truth of who you are and who you're becoming. Not from fear of what might happen if you don't, but from love for what becomes possible when you do. So how do you actually set boundaries? Especially if you've never done it before or if you've tried and failed. So here's a step-by-step process. Step 1, get radically honest about what you need. You cannot set a boundary if you don't know what you need. So start here. What do I actually need? Not what you think you should need, not what would be convenient for everyone else. What do you actually need? Maybe you need more rest, more time alone, more support, less responsibility, respectful communication, space to process your emotions, time for your own interest and creativity. Write it down, get clear, be honest. You can't protect what you haven't named. Step 2, identify where your boundaries are being violated now and ask yourself, where are my boundaries being crossed? Where are you saying yes when you mean no? Tolerating behaviour that hurts you, giving more than you have, feeling resentful, losing yourself. Again, make a list, be specific. Maybe it's your boss expecting you to answer emails at all hours, a friend who only calls when they need something, a family member who criticises you constantly, a partner who doesn't respect your need for alone time, yourself pushing beyond your limits because you think you should. Name the violations. You can't change what you won't acknowledge. And step 3, decide what your boundary is now. For each violation, decide, what is my boundary? Be clear, be specific. Not, I need you to respect me more. It's too vague. But I need you to speak to me without yelling. If you yell, I will leave the room until we can both be calm. Not, I need more time for myself. Again, too vague. But I need one evening a week where I'm not available for plans. I'm blocking off Thursday evenings for myself. Clarity is kindness, for you and for others. Step 4, communicate your boundary. And this is where it can get a bit scary, right? Because now you actually have to say it. Here's a simple formula. I need boundary. If violation happens, this is the consequence. For example, I need to not discuss my personal life at work. If you ask me personal questions, I'm going to redirect the conversation. Another one. I need you to call me before you come over. If you show up unannounced, I won't answer the door. Another. I need our conversation to be reciprocal. If I'm the only one sharing and you're not engaging, I'm going to end the call. Now, here's the important part. You don't have to justify, explain, or defend your boundary. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. I'm not available at the weekend is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your energy. Step 5, enforce your boundary. This is the hardest part, and it's the part where most people fail, because setting a boundary is one thing, enforcing it is another. If you set a boundary and don't enforce it, you're teaching people that your boundaries don't matter. So if you say, if you yell at me, I'll leave the room, and then they yell at you and you stay, you've just taught them that your boundary is negotiable. Boundaries without consequences are just suggestions. So enforce it every time. It will feel uncomfortable. It will feel scary. You might feel guilty, but here's the truth. The discomfort of enforcing a boundary is temporary. The cost of not having boundaries is permanent. Step 6, manage your guilt, because you will feel guilty, especially at first. You'll think, I'm being selfish, I'm hurting them, I should just give in, maybe I'm asking for too much. And here's what I want you to remember. Guilt is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. Guilt is evidence that you're doing something new. You've been conditioned to believe that your needs don't matter. So when you start honouring them, your nervous system freaks out. It says, this is dangerous, you're going to be rejected, you're going to be alone. But that's just old wiring. It's not the truth. The guilt will pass, your self-respect will remain. So when the guilt comes, acknowledge it. I feel guilty, and that's okay. I'm doing something new. I'm learning to honour myself. The guilt doesn't mean I'm wrong. And then hold the boundary anyway. Step 7, expect pushback and hold steady anyway. Here's something no one tells you about boundaries. The people who benefited from you having no boundaries will be the most upset when you start setting them. They will push back. They will test you. They will try to make you feel guilty or selfish or wrong. They might say things like, you've changed. You never used to be like this. You're being selfish. I thought you cared about me. You're overreacting. Why are you being so difficult? And here's what you need to understand. This pushback is not evidence that your boundary is wrong. It's evidence that your boundary is working, because you're disrupting a dynamic that worked for them. You're no longer playing the role that they wanted you to play, and they don't like it. But here's the thing. Their discomfort with your boundary is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions about your limits. You are not responsible for making everyone comfortable at the expense of your own well-being. You are not responsible for staying small so others can stay comfortable. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your wholeness, to your energy. So when the pushback comes, and it will, hold steady. You don't have to argue, you don't have to defend, you don't have to explain over and over. You just repeat your boundary. I understand you're upset, and my boundary stands. I hear that this is hard for you, and I still need this. I know this is different, and this is what I need moving forward. Boundaries are not up for negotiation. Step 8, release the people who won't respect your boundaries. And here's the hardest truth of all. Some people will not respect your boundaries, no matter how clearly you communicate them, no matter how consistently you enforce them. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can keep trying to make them understand, you can keep explaining, you can keep hoping they'll change, or you can accept that they've shown you who they are, and you can create some distance. This doesn't mean you have to cut everyone out of your life, but it does mean that you get to decide how much access they have to you, how much energy you give them, and how much of yourself you share with them. Not everyone gets to be in your inner circle, and that's okay. Some people are meant to be in your life at a distance. Some people are meant to be in your life for a season, not forever. And some people are meant to exit your life entirely. Releasing people who won't respect your boundaries is not mean, it's self-preservation. Because you cannot stay whole while allowing people to violate you. You cannot protect your energy while giving it to people who drain you. You cannot live wholeheartedly while tolerating people who disrespect your limits. Boundaries will cost you people, but they will save you yourself. And that trade is worth it. Let me give you some practical examples of boundaries in different areas of life. So, a work boundary scenario. Your boss expects you to answer emails and texts at all hours, including weekends. Boundary. I'm available for work communication Monday through to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Outside of those hours, I won't be checking email unless there's a true emergency. The enforcement of that, you turn off work notifications after 6 p.m. Don't respond to non-emergency messages on weekends. The pushback, but we need you to be responsive. Your response, I'm fully responsive during work hours. Outside of those hours, I need to rest so that I can show up at my best. Family boundaries scenario. A family member constantly criticizes your life choices, your career, your relationship, your parenting, your appearance. Boundary. I'm not open to discussing that topic with you anymore. If you bring it up, I'll change the subject or I'll end the conversation. Enforcement. When they bring it up, say, I've asked you not to discuss this with me and I'm going to go now. And leave or hang up. Pushback. I'm just trying to help. I care about you. Your response. I know you care. And I need you to show that you care by respecting my boundary. Let's take a friendship boundary scenario. A friend only reaches out when they need something, to vent, to ask for help, to borrow something, but they're never available when you need support. Boundary. I value our friendship and I need it to feel more reciprocal. I need to feel like you're interested in my life too, not just when you need something. Enforcement. Stop always being available. Start saying no sometimes. Notice if anything changes. The outcome, they either step up and the friendship becomes more balanced or they fade away. Either way, you've honoured yourself. Let's take a romantic relationship. For example, your partner shuts down or stonewalls you during conflict instead of communicating. Boundary. When we have a conflict, I need us to talk about it. If you shut down and won't engage, I'm going to take some space and we'll revisit the conversation when you're ready to talk. Enforcement. Don't chase them, don't beg them to talk. Give them space and come back when they're ready to engage. Pushback. You're being too demanding. Not everyone processes things in the same way. Response. I understand we process differently, and I need communication to feel safe in this relationship. We can figure out how to do that in a way that works for both of us. Self boundaries. This is the one people forget about. You also need boundaries with yourself. Boundaries like, I will not work past 7 p.m. on weekdays, or I will not check social media first thing in the morning, or I will not say yes to things I don't have capacity for. I will not push through exhaustion. I will rest. Self-boundaries are just important as boundaries with others, because sometimes the person violating your boundaries is you. I want you to shift the way you think about boundaries, because most of us have been taught that boundaries are literally about saying no, about shutting people out, about being rigid or selfish, but that's not what boundaries are. Boundaries are love. They're love for yourself because you're saying, I matter, my needs matter, my energy matters. And they're love for others because you're saying, I want to show up for you fully, and I can only do that if I'm not depleted. So I'm protecting my energy so I can give from a full cup. Boundaries create the conditions for real love, real connection, for real presence. Because when you have boundaries, you're not resentful, you're not exhausted, you're not performing, you're not people-pleasing, you're just here, fully, authentically. And that's the greatest gift you can give anyone. Boundaries are not walls, they're the foundation of wholehearted living. I want to leave you with something you can come back to whenever setting boundaries feels hard. Place your hand on your heart and say, I am allowed to have needs. I am allowed to have limits. I am allowed to protect my energy. I am allowed to say no. I am allowed to disappoint people. I am allowed to change my mind. I am allowed to choose myself. My boundaries are not selfish. My boundaries are self-respect. My boundaries are love. I release the guilt. I release the fear. I release the need to be everything to everyone. I am enough as I am. I am whole as I am. I am worthy of boundaries. Say this as many times as you need to. Write it down, put it somewhere you can see it. Because you are allowed to have boundaries. You always have been. Here's what I want you to take away from this episode. Boundaries are not selfish, they're essential. They're how you protect your energy, how you stay connected to yourself, how you create the conditions for healthy relationships and wholehearted living. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. So if you don't like how you're being treated, look at your boundaries. Setting boundaries will feel uncomfortable. People will push back, you'll feel guilty, and you need to do it anyway. Because the discomfort of setting boundaries is temporary. The cost of not having them is permanent. And here's the beautiful truth. The people who are meant to be in your life will respect your boundaries. The ones who won't, they were never your people anyway. Boundaries will cost you people, but they will save you yourself. And that trade, always worth it. So, your invitation for this week, identify one boundary you need to set. Just one. Don't try and overhaul your entire life. Start small. Where are you saying yes when you mean no? Where are you tolerating what you shouldn't? Where are you giving more than you have? Pick one. Get clear on your boundary. Write it down. Be specific. I need boundary. If the violation, I will consequence. Communicate your boundary. Say it out loud. Say it to the person. Say it to yourself in the mirror. Practice speaking it out until it feels less scary. And enforce that boundary. So when the moment comes, hold steady. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're feeling guilty. And manage your guilt with compassion. Listen again to last week's episode. When the guilt comes, place your hand on your heart and say, I feel guilty, and that's okay. I'm doing something new. The guilt doesn't mean I'm wrong. I'm learning to honour myself. Boundaries is a loaded topic for so many people. And I think it's because we have learnt this idea that they are these walls, that they're rigid, that they're designed to keep people out. Here's the way that I see boundaries working in life when clients start implementing this work. It's far more gentler and softer. You know, you take all of the phrases, all of the ideas that we've explored in today's podcast episode, and you place it in your language. You adapt them to what's appropriate to this situation. If it's someone who is really close to you and you genuinely love them, you're going to put that boundary in a different way to potentially a work colleague or someone that you don't know. What I really want you to take from this episode is that this is the foundation. This is how we implement and work with boundaries. You now get to embody this concept and allow it to filter through your uniqueness. Okay. It's really important that it's not just about taking someone else's words or someone else's ideas. This is about you looking at where your own boundary violations are happening now. Use the Rooted in Wholeness series guide that you can download for free now on wholeheartedinstitute.com. Just go straight to the website. You'll see exactly where you can download the guide that accompanies this whole series. There's a whole page dedicated to this podcast episode. And that's really going to guide you through you being able to answer the questions for yourself and then be able to put the words into your own voice. Okay. And For next week in episode 9, we're moving into stage 5 of the Wholehearted Technique, which is all about mapping your inner landscape and getting to know all the parts of you. We're going to explore all those different parts of yourself, you know, the critic, the protector, the wounded child, the wise self, and how understanding these parts help you to choose which one leads. Because wholeness isn't about eliminating parts of yourself, it's about integrating them. So until then, practice your boundaries, start small, hold steady, and remember, you're allowed to have needs, you're allowed to have limits, you're allowed to protect your energy. Your boundaries are not selfish, they're self-respect, they're love. It's love in action. Okay, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for choosing yourself. Please do let me know in the comments what has landed for you in today's episode. Please make sure you go and download the Rooted in Wholeness guide, which is there to support you through this journey of wholeheartedness through this series. And please do subscribe, share. I would love for you to share the podcast with anyone that you think would really resonate with this work right now. And I look forward to seeing you next week.